Jeanette. But thank you so much for being here. And we're very happy to have you with us to understand the intricacies and challenges, as well as what makes Nordics unique. But before that, would like to hear about you.
Okay, well, hello everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. I'm absolutely delighted. I'm sorry there's a little bit of background noise here behind me. Hopefully that will reduce very soon. I think a couple of people are having lunch. I think, as Nigel just said, I'm just out of a meeting in the Danish Parliament, actually. So it was a huge rush to kind of come out and speak to you guys. So I had to kind of just camp in the first possible place. But anyway, so thank you for the opportunity and hope that it works nevertheless. So I'm Jeanette Carlsson. I'm founder and CEO of Nordic Baltics. So we are Northern Europe's largest tech startup ecosystem. We have offices in Copenhagen, Stockholm, and in Helsinki, and we cover the whole of the Nordics and Baltics. Our mission is to accelerate startup and scale-up growth across the Nordics. So I will show you a couple of pictures, I think, if I can share, because I think it's always a good idea to show pictures rather than lots of words. So I'm going to do exactly that just now. So hopefully that's our website. You might recognize this. So just a little bit of background on Nordic Baltics, and then I'll give you a little bit of background about myself as well. So economist by background, born in Copenhagen to a Danish mother and a Swedish father. So I'm a true Viking, really, with a British family behind me. So you can probably hear the British bit. So I have a few different passports. One of them is British. So that's very exciting. So my career has predominantly been built internationally. So I started life as an economist in the European Commission. I studied at London School of Economics in London, University College London. Went to Brussels, worked as an economist, very quickly got into kind of strategic matters, got asked to join PricewaterhouseCoopers Strategy Consulting in London, and started life there working in tech. On telecommedia technology, and from that point onwards, literally build a career in tech, very focused on TMT strategy, growing technology companies, but very much, with one foot in the UK and the other foot in the Nordics. So I've kind of worn those two hats all the way through. And then various strategy boutiques in London. I was asked to rejoin PwC. We got bought by IBM. That's the consulting arm of PricewaterhouseCoopers, got bought by IBM. And so I ended up joining IBM, if you like, through the back door, if I can put it like that. And that is, of course, an enormous tech behemoth, if you want to call it that. And so that kind of catapulted me into the world of much larger tech companies on the one hand, and helping those grow and scale, but also as I became responsible for scouting, recruiting startups to IBM's WebSphere platform, that got me very firmly focused on the what was at the time a very embryonic startup ecosystem in London. And in the process of that, I was leading different global European and UK teams in IBM in the UK, and as I said, with responsibility for the Nordics. I met Russ Shaw, who had just at the time set up our sibling, our older brother or sister in London. So if my internet connection is reliable, which hopefully it is in just 1 second, you will see a picture of our global family. That's very important because everything that I talk about today in Nordic Baltics is effectively started in London back in 2013. So Russ Shaw set up London Baltics in 2013 to create a startup grassroots ecosystem in London to fuel and support what was an embryonic tech sector at the time, and with focus on startups. And I became part of that from the beginning. The picture's a bit slow, but it'll come in a minute. So I was part of Tech London Advocates and building that up from the beginning, and really saw what we could achieve when you bring smart people together, which gets us into the whole ecosystem conversation. Yeah. So so very, very quickly, we formed a grassroots ecosystem in London, and saw what that delivered in terms of startup growth. Yeah. And so matching startups with investors, matching startups with corporates for scale-up opportunities, matching startups with policymakers, and giving them all the know-how, people, capital support they need to scale their businesses. And I ended up advising the UK government and the staff and so on. And within a very short period of time, I said to me, let's go and do this in the Nordics, because there's a similar need to join the dots, right? So my picture's not coming up, but you get the idea anyway, and you can look at our website. So very quickly, we agreed, Russ and I, that we would build a Nordic organization very similar to Tech London Advocates. So I set up Tech Nordic Advocates in 2015. So that's 8 years ago now. Why? Because I had seen what we could achieve in London by bringing smart people together. And given that each of the Nordic markets is very small, we really struggle to offer scale potential, both in terms of, here's the picture, it's coming up now, right? We struggle to offer, obviously, scale by virtue of our small market size, and that also means we struggle to offer access to know-how, to people who have scaled big companies before in tech, access to capital, access to talent, generally speaking, right? So, so my vision, to your point, number was, why don't we, same as what we had just done in London, why don't we join the dots in each of the Nordic countries, same as we've done in London, the UK, but not only in each country, why don't we try and join the dots and break down country borders across the Nordics so that we can create that scale, at home, right?
Okay. And this center organization, Jeanette, you talked about, that is, it all started from London in 2013, you said. Okay. And then it grew out to all these different countries like Florida and Spain and everything. Okay, that's phenomenal. It's 10 years. Okay.
Yeah. So if I can spend a minute on that, I'd love to talk to you about that, because I think that's absolutely fundamental, to who we are and what we offer, vision behind the whole thing. So as I just said, it all starts in London. We're the turquoise bit here across the Nordics and Baltics, and then since I've grown the Nordics Baltics organization, we now have brothers and sisters around the world. 30 tech hubs in total, as you can see here, lots of colors, from Tech Bay Area advocates to Canada, Mexico, across Europe and into China, Singapore, Australia, etc. So around 30,000 people in our organization, and that is what really, in addition to our programs, makes us completely unique, that we have a global footprint. So very, very quickly, we can connect startups who work with us across the Nordics and Baltics with people with know-how, with opportunities, with capital, anywhere in the world, at a flick of a thumb. And that's unrivaled. No one has a global footprint in the Nordics the way we do. And that is absolutely one of the key messages that I want to get across today. That not only do we have a unique Nordic ecosystem, we also have a unique global.
Okay, well, that's awesome. And if I may ask at this stage, like, for example, you said you have access to a lot of startups, and then startups being the base of the of this, then you connect them with other startups, you connect them with funding opportunities, with corporate opportunities and innovation. How do startups actually connect with you? Are you a network organization? Are you a membership organization? How does the connection take place?
So exactly as you just said. So I just flicked onto this page just because that might be a good way to show all of this. So yes, absolutely, fundamentally, startups are at the heart, and scale-ups, right, at the heart of what we do in Tech Nordic Advocates, is supporting your growth and your upscale and access to capital, international expansion. And we do that through very targeted growth initiatives. Yeah. So matchmaking events through TNA Invest, our scale-up programs. We have Europe's only international female tech founder growth program, which is running in Sweden, in Denmark, in Finland, etc. We have TNA Academy, we have growth mentors, we start up corporate innovation, etc. So in answer to your question, yes, we are a membership-based organization, and the way to take advantage of all of this is to become a member of Technology Baltics. So that's correct. We are not for profit organization, by the way. So no one is making any profit out of anybody. The membership fee is funding, all of these programs and the support that we can give you. So yes, that's right. We're a membership-based organization.
Okay, awesome. That's really great to know. And maybe during the talk, it'll be good if we could share some link with everyone so that they can access all the resources or the membership opportunities that you have.
Yeah.
If we go a little bit into, because you have extensive experience, you actually were part of Tech Nordic Advocates when it was starting up in London. And you, of course, have traveled around the world and all that experience. If I asked you a question like, what in your view makes Nordics and Baltics a unique ecosystem? How are we different and how are we similar, for example?
I get asked this question all the time. I do a lot of media interviews. I did interviews in London last week during London Tech Week, right? Where we took, as we've just discussed before, where we took 16 Nordic companies to pitch to investors in London at London Stock Exchange, who are one of our partners, right? So what makes us unique? It's very interesting because we have, a disproportionate share of large companies coming out of the Nordics, right? And yet we have scale-up challenges. So that, of course, begs the question, so what is it that we can do that in the Nordics that's, unique, compelling, and different? And I always answer the question this way. We are extremely good problem solvers, right? It's and that is even before we get into talks about technology. It's the mindset, it's the education, it's our upbringing in the Nordics. We are quite analytical, we're quite problem-solving focused in our school system is teaching children and young people to think independently, to analyze problems, to think about solutions to problems. And that's really where it starts. It starts in our education system, that we approach the world from a problem-solving, independent thinking, and an analytical perspective, right? So when we grow up and we leave school and we think about our careers and how we want to spend our lives, this problem-solving mindset is quite endemic in how we operate. And if you take that and you match that with, the Nordics Baltics as a whole being wealthy economies, generally speaking, right? High standard of living, early technology adopters, yeah. So who had the highest, broadband penetration world, mobile phone even penetration in the world, the soonest in the Nordics, right? Remember the onset of, hey, who's got 3G and who's got mobile phones? Before anyone else got going, we had like 100% mobile penetration rate across the Nordics, yeah? So if you mix the problem-solving mindset with the wealth we can afford to buy top-end mobile phones and high-speed broadband, and we are early technology adopters, and we have governments that think about the infrastructure that we need. If you put those building blocks together, you can really see how we think, hey, here's a problem, let's fix it, and let's take technology and let's get that to help us, right?
That's so interesting that because if you go to any startup pitch deck, even at a Klarna stage or somebody just coming out of university and building their first idea, startup pitch decks always have this second slide. First is your title and second slide is always about problem. And in many cases in different geographies, we go back and say that you need to have a strong, compelling problem. And if you're a problem-solving nation or a region, you're in a perfect spot to create innovations and
Absolutely,
startups.
that is it. That's exactly it, right? And we are also, and I think that's potentially the next dimension. We also punch above our weight in the Nordics, right? So we are small countries. We're quite conscious of being quite small. But we're also Vikings, really, a lot of us, right? Like I said, so we're warriors, really. We want to win. And we are not going to be held back by our small size. So we punch above our weight. We think, hey, here's a climate crisis. Here is a financial system that isn't really working. So we've got lots of fintechs. So we jump at big problems, at mega trends, at the world's problems, and say, you know what? We're going to take this problem on, and we can probably fix it in the Nordics. And we have the confidence, despite our small size, to punch above our weight and say, you know what? The rest of the world, you need to know about us a lot in the Nordics. This is what we're doing. But we need to get better. The last bit we can talk about we're not good at bragging, so we can come back to that.
No, but this phrase is so aptly put, like punch above our weight. Like we are not big, but then we are trying to address big challenges, and then we are always so it's, and then the Viking spirit that you talked about. So it's really very interesting. I wish we can take a lot of notes over here. But Jeanette, going forward, like the state that the age that we are in right now, there's AI coming in, there's a lot of work happening. Nordics is getting more like as an impact center of the world. There's a lot of sustainable innovation, impact, social impact ideas coming in. What opportunities do you see from the top? Like if entrepreneurs are starting their journeys right now, what opportunities exist in the ecosystem? How can they best use the wealth of resources around them in the Nordics?
And I think, I think this is where the whole ecosystem conversation comes in, right? One of the things I spend a lot of time on, partly kind of using my, UK, London tech sector, US. I've worked a lot in the US as well. That mindset is there's huge opportunity out there. But one of the things we're not as good at in the Nordics as we should be is the whole collaboration aspect. The partnering aspect, the ecosystem. So I'd love to have that conversation about ecosystems a little bit, right? And the other thing we're not very good at, as I was starting to say, is bragging, which is not a very nice word, but we're not very good at telling the world, how good we are actually. So we just talked about what we are amazingly good at, but there are a couple of things we're less good at, and one of them is building ecosystems. We have a little bit, if you compare how we operate to the United States, Silicon Valley in particular, and also, other parts of the US. I've just come back from a trade mission to New York with 28 Nordic startups. Yeah. So they saw firsthand how things work very differently over there. And in London, of course, as well. And the mindset in the US and in the UK is very much, hey, let's find someone who can help. Let's find someone we can partner with. Let's make 2 and 2 equal 5, which is really the essence of what an ecosystem is, right? It's a symbiotic relationship in many ways, right? It's an organism of animals historically, right? Biologically, that work together and kind of form a symbiosis, right? We need to get much better thinking, you know what, I've got a really great idea and I'm solving a problem, and I can do that with technology, and I have a vision and I want to go and do this, but I can't be a CTO and a CFO and a CEO and a CMO and everything else at the same time because I'm only one person. So who can I find out there in the ecosystem I can share my problem idea and my business solution idea with? And maybe they share my passion, and maybe we can get together and make some magic happen. That mindset, we need to really work much harder on.
But you're absolutely right. For example, Startup Grind started from Silicon Valley. Founder Institute comes from Silicon Valley. So the ecosystem, like Founders Live, the 3 ecosystems that I'm building in Nordics, these are all US-based, Silicon Valley-based with strong roots. And I see a lot of difference as well. Like, for example, if I go back to the earlier part of your talk, that we are very good in identifying problems and solving. So we are most likely, we are solvers. But when I check at our counterparts in the US communities, they are commercial. Like, so there's a huge mindset difference. We kind of overbuild products. I've seen startups overbuild products and kind of go out with kind of okay pitches, not like pitching above their weight. They're pitching below their weight. So that's the reality of the startups. So startups, when they're pitching from Nordics, they're very humble, not very sure, asking, let's say, one fraction of capital they would be raising if they were a US startup in US, for example. So I think there is so there is over humility maybe, and also a lot more focus on solving and just solving the problem, and less about, as you're saying, creating partnerships, commercializing clients.
Absolutely. I think if you put it as a, so ecosystems can be lots of different things, right? So let's think about what an ecosystem really is, right? So there's lots of different types of ecosystems. There might be industry ecosystems. There could be like value chain ecosystems. There could be solution ecosystems. Yeah. So you take the Apple iPhone, for example. I mean, there's any number of partners involved in getting you a handset that has all that, right? It's not just Apple, that's the handset and so on. There's a whole load of partners involved in it. That's an ecosystem. That's a solution ecosystem, really, in a way, right? And then you might have an industry ecosystem in healthcare or financial services or life sciences or whatever. Right? Lots of different types of ecosystems. And what we're extremely good at, as I said, is, we're very good at spotting a problem that needs fixing. And then we're very good at saying, right, I know how to fix this. And we might get the solution, done. But then taking that solution to the next stage is where we need to get much, much better at building ecosystems and partnering so we can scale up and expand internationally, right? And maybe part of the reason we're less good at that bit is obviously we are smaller, and so we haven't got any Googles, Facebooks, Amazons in the Nordics. We have a number of unicorns and the Klarnas of this world and so on, but we haven't really, if you think about it, and that's a headache, right? Same Europe as a whole. Where are the Googles and Facebooks and Amazons coming up? Europe, right? It's the same. And part of the reason for that is, we need that mindset to scale up, think bigger, move faster, think who can help us with this trajectory, right?
True.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very interesting point that you have made. One of the problems that I have noticed also in startups, at least in the early stage, is when you're building a startup, you get comfortable, you try to build it in your home market, then the home markets are not very big in this case, and Europe and is very fragmented as well, especially if you're building digital startups. Language is one part, like how do you regulation the language, while US on the other part is a single big market, single language, one set of regulations, although there might be state differences. But really, really good points. I'll just pick up one point that is coming up here. Bogdan has a question here. A lot of startups, so this is a question from the community coming up. Bogdan has this. A lot of startups and scale-ups in Nordics are struggling at the moment, and in many cases we will be looking at another wave of layoffs. What in your opinion halting the growth of these startups, and what would be one thing you would do to get back on track growing ARR?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a very good question, and as you can imagine, the answer is it depends, right? Because there's no one answer that fits everyone, right? But what is it that's going on, right? So we've had a number of waves of technology layoffs in the big companies and the big tech companies as well, right? You know that from Google and Amazon and so on have laid off a lot of people, and maybe one of the mega trends we're looking at is the aftermath of the pandemic, right? So during the pandemic, obviously, as we were very restricted physically, a lot of people set up technology businesses, and the likes of Amazon grew phenomenally. Yeah, because so you had your stuff delivered because you weren't allowed to leave your house. Yeah, so and so on. So a lot of technology companies grew phenomenally during the pandemic, for those reasons. So maybe there's a degree of correction going on, that now we're outside the pandemic, hopefully. Maybe that some of what was created and grew in a pandemic isn't survivable post-pandemic. So there could be a degree of correcting going on there, right? And that goes for Google and the others as well. In terms of, in the Nordics and Baltics, I think we may well be hitting exactly what I'm talking about, which is once you reach a certain stage, now what, right? Because then Sweden or Denmark or Finland become too small, right? You're saying, right, I've exhausted my growth potential here in Sweden or in Denmark or in Finland or Norway or Iceland or, any of the Nordic Baltics. So that is the point at which you think, right, where do I go next? Yeah, should I turn left or should I turn right? And how do I expand internationally? This is what we see so much in technology because of the global family that we have, which is why I bothered showing you that in the beginning, right? That we are really a launch pad for a lot of startups and scale-ups for the rest of the world, because they hit that point of how are we now going to grow? What's the next phase for us? And that is where, you need people like us who can help you launch it to the rest of the world.
I think that's a very good point. In fact, we have had recent chats here in Startup Grind. I invited Fishbrain, which is a vertical social network. We also had Volumental, which does that foot measurements, Cognity, a tech platform, and Heya, which is Sweden's largest sports platform. Surprisingly, all of these platforms have chosen US as the main market, so they are like aggressively expanding. They, of course, they build their home markets, but as you are saying, it's very important to always in startups think of next jumps. How do you make the next set of collaborations tap into new markets? I'll just take this question which is coming on. I think it's a related question to Bogdan's question. Speaking of tech company layoffs, do you think that they have hit the bottom in terms of layoff due to having got their profitability in order, or do you expect there to be more layoffs from these companies? Interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, and
Elias, thank you.
Again, there's no one size fits all answer. Yeah, because the reason for layoffs and so on, may be different in each of the tech companies, but I think the answer is partly the one I gave before, is there is a mega trend about technology companies growing during the pandemic, and so there might be an element of correction going on. The other thing that of course we're witnessing is that access to capital right now is very hard. So that's a result of some of the mega trends we're seeing with the war in Ukraine and all the rest of it. So access to capital is hard. Inflation is high, interest rates are higher, and so on. So have we hit the bottom? It's very hard to say, but I think, and that's why you need to focus on being lean and efficient and keeping your costs down, and very much focus on how do we scale this company, right? So, there's a difference between growth and scaling. I teach a lot on business schools and, in Warwick University and across the Nordics on TNA's programs. And, I'm an advisor to the EU's accelerator programs and so on. And I say the same thing all the time. It really is about the mindset and the growth ambition to scale up and expand internationally, and putting in place the measures in your organization, the technologies, the processes, the ways of doing things, that allows you to scale. Okay,
very good point. Jeanette, you mentioned capital blockage, or the crunch that we are seeing as one, and then pandemic and the correction that's happening. I'd like to put one more point here with AI coming in. That's very recent as well. So in the short term, there could be a lot of flux in the market. Whenever a new technology hits, it hits very fast. The adopters or the diffusion could be that there's a lot of early adoption that happens, which leads to a lot of flux in the HR side. However, people, whenever a new technology comes, we as human take some time to kind of adapt, learn, and then go back and start implementing and kind of working with it. So I think the long-term impact will be positive, but in the short term, there could also be flux due to AI adoption at scale by some of the large-scale tech companies, which think they can probably move with efficiency models based purely around AI. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like anything. It's like I said at the beginning. It's like going back to, the onset of mobile phones, right? We all kind of remember the first Nokia phones. Everybody gets extremely excited about, now there's a mobile phone, and then there becomes data. Then you've got smartphones and all the rest of it. And now there's a lot of hype about AI and stuff, right? So, but I think what's really important to remember about technology like AI is it's not about the technology itself, but actually how widely applicable that is. And being, business people as we are, rather than obsessed with the technology, we need to think about what's the application of this, right? And how can the application of AI, for example, how could that play a role in helping us scale our businesses? Yeah, as opposed to, oh wow, AI is amazing, sure. But I'm very focused on what the technology can do rather than the technology itself, right? How can it improve people's lives? How can it make businesses, cheaper, faster, better, more efficient? Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So when you're working with startups and you work with startups in multiple geographies, what are some of the key challenges that you see in startups? You mentioned one of the problems with startups, it's like in Nordics especially, is about building partnerships or thinking beyond a particular geography, going out. And what other things you notice in startups? Where can they do better?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of things, and one of them you would expect me to say. So, but number one, there's a fair amount of support available for startups generally across the Nordics compared to other countries, right? But one of the challenges, of course, is knowing where to find that support. Because if you sit at home and you come up with a great idea, everything starts around the kitchen table, yeah, at home. You sit there thinking, where do I start? Yeah. So one of the things we could get much better at, and that's what we work on quite a lot at Technology Advocates, is, helping startups really, know what to do on Monday morning. Where do you start? Yeah. Where is the help? Who can you ask? Yeah. Phone a friend kind of thing. From early stage, right? And it's all about ecosystem building. It's all about partnering, access to information, and all of that stuff. And again, the mindset that you shouldn't sit at home and feel lonely and depressed if you can't scale your business in 2 weeks. You need to open up and ask for help. Yeah. So I think that is very important to encourage. The other thing, and you will expect me to say that, is we have a massive problem in the Nordics and the Baltics with underrepresented groups in technology. We have a huge a massively highly educated population as a whole across the Nordics and Baltics. We are smart people generally, and I don't say that because we think we're smart. I mean, we are a pretty well educated workforce, across the board. But unfortunately, in technology, we're not using all that talent. And, I have found it, and since for the last 3 years, delivered across the Nordics, Europe's only international female tech founder growth program. And we have supported, by the end of this year, 350 female founders across the Nordics to set up new technology businesses, grow technology businesses, scale them, raise capital, and so on. We are Europe's only international female tech founder program, and I'm on a mission to correct the gender imbalance in tech to ensure that we offer talent support and everything we can throw at all this amazing female talent we have out there who want to be entrepreneurs, but who are coming up against, so many challenges in the ecosystem, from lack of support to, capital and all the rest of it. So that's one thing I'm a high horse the whole time about the female founder problem, because there's huge untapped potential we're not using. And it irritates me that people who are extremely capable and have businesses in their heads, cannot get an opportunity to get this business out. So that's one thing. More recently, in addition to the female founder thing, I've started doing a lot more work on other underrepresented groups, because underrepresented groups in tech, it's not just about women, it's, the gender gap is the biggest by virtue of the fact that half the workforce is female, right? So you've got to start somewhere with a problem, right? So we started with it, but there are many other, there are men from non-Nordic ethnic heritage that struggle, same thing, to get support in the ecosystem, raise capital, prejudice about ethnic backgrounds, God knows what, all this stuff. There are people who have different forms of what we call disability, for want of another word, who can be, brilliant innovators, and maybe they can't walk, but they have a fantastic brain, but and come up. I mean, we have loads of brilliant physicians and Nobel Prize winners who are, not necessarily what we would call fully able, but they're brilliant innovators. They're up against a lot of stuff, right? So bottom line is, across the Nordics and Baltics, we have huge amounts of untapped potential that we really need to tap into and support if we want to become / sustain a position as innovation front runners, right?
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. We have a question coming up again from Elias. Speaking of support, is there any visual overview of what support exists in the Nordic countries, either as a whole or by country?
Yeah, and the short answer is actually no, and that so it's an excellent question, right? That is one of the issues, right? That is fragmented, and I can tell you, and it irritates me. So I would love organizations like Nordic Innovation and so on to commission some work. I can tell you who all the organizations are in each of the Nordic and Baltic countries, right? Because it's in my head and it's in my team's head. I know exactly where to go in Finland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, right? But that's in my head and my team's head and stuff. But we haven't had any funding to kind of build this big thing out. Just like, if you're in Sweden, go here. If you're in Norway, there isn't funding. That work isn't done, and that's part of the problem. Yeah. That's part of the challenge you have if you sit around the kitchen table at home thinking, I wish I knew where to go on Monday morning. And if you were told, here is a database that lists, all the bodies across the Nordics, then that would help, wouldn't it?
Very, very interesting point. I actually worked with a group of entrepreneurs, one from the Swedish funding agencies and another from Norwegian. So I think entrepreneurs are creating systems around it, kind of like how can you spider around the web and find this information, standardize the language differences and create a central repository. So there's a lot of development, Elias, a lot of development work that is happening. But as Jeanette, you were saying, still most of the countries are acting like silos, and then EU sends out its own. So there's a lot of information or program information or grants, calls coming from specific donor organization, EU, and but then it's very regional as well, and that is a challenge realized. And actually, one of the things I would very much like to see, and this, and this is part of my interest in as being an advisor to the EU, is try and simplify things a little bit, right? So, and it always happens with, application forms for soft funding, in each of the Nordic countries, at the Nordic level as a whole, at EU level. Let's not make it so complicated, right? If what we want is innovators that can create new technology-led companies and jobs, exports, and the next Google, Facebooks, and Amazons coming out of Europe, let's try and cut out some of the bureaucracy and time to money and 45-page application forms. It's startups are time poor and cash poor, right? They want money, they want know-how and opportunity, and we want them to do all of that. So let's try and create a system where all of the paperwork and form filling is much reduced, so we can help these innovators that we really want, right? Let's make life easier for them. Got it. Got it. Jeanette, any inspirational message you would like to give to the startup founders who are building businesses here? Like how should they be thinking, any direction they should have in their mind while building the startups? You mentioned partnerships as one of the routes, seeking collaborations and not building anything in isolation. To round off the discussion, we can probably go there, and probably you can also discuss a little bit about your plans going forward.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we all know this, and if you're already a startup, you're already a founder, you know this too. You don't need me to tell you, and that is, you know, you need to have the stomach for the fight. Yeah, it's not easy. It really isn't easy, right? But you also need to think about what's the alternative. You know, you can go and get a full-time job and work in a corporation or in a public sector institution or in a city institution or whatever. If that excites you, then and then you probably shouldn't be a founder, right? Equally, if you're somebody who, as we just said, you know, wants to solve problems in a certain way, start your own business, really an entrepreneur at heart, etc., then, you know, then absolutely do what you're doing, but also understand it's not necessarily an easy ride. Yeah. So you got to have the stomach for the fight. You've got to be resilient. You got to be able to accept that a no isn't a no to you as a person. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with you. It may be a no to your business where it is right now. Maybe if you tweak things a little bit, in next time will be a yes. Yeah. So you got to have broad shoulders and, like I said, stomach for the fight. I'll tell you something. The US ambassador in Finland, we had an event just last year, and he you know, said something to everybody, which I absolutely loved. He said, look, you got to understand the no is a slow way to yes, right? So, you know, and no doesn't mean go home, pack up and go and get a proper job. And no may just mean you're not ready, you've got to tweak something or come back next year when we're ready or whatever it is, right? So no is a slow way to yes. You got to understand that and have the stomach for that fight. Yeah. That, you know, and think that if you get 5 no's, then there are gazillions of others out there that also get 5 no's, and eventually you'll get a yes. Let me tell you, right? I built TNA from the kitchen table into Northern Europe's biggest startup ecosystem. Let me tell you how many no's I've got on the way, right? But so I always say to people, you know what I'm looking for is a yes, yeah, not a no. So that's it. So how can you turn a no into a yes? That's a challenge. That's a problem you've got to solve. Yeah. And of course, as a woman, you know, I want to be a role model to other female founders and show everyone. I did an interview last week in London. It's and really, you know, as you can hear, I'm an economist, I'm a strategy person, I'm growing technology businesses. You don't need to be a nerdy, techie, you know, PhD in quantum mechanics person to build a career in tech. There's lots of opportunity in tech. Yeah. So think of me and look at me and everyone on our program across Europe who are female founders and think there are people like you in tech. So if we can do it, so can you. Yeah.
Great points. Like, I love what you said. No is a slow way to yes. Like, I think that's such a strong message, and to have broad shoulders. Really great points, Jeanette. I would really like to thank you on behalf of Startup Grind, our community, from myself and all the amazing people who joined us for today's talk. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you for the opportunity. And if you can find me on LinkedIn, you can reach out and we can talk together, and hopefully we can do stuff together with you guys as well. So ecosystems, right? Remember this. Now, if I can say one last thing. Remember, ecosystems is about making 2 and 2 equal 5. And there's a little bit of a mindset in the Nordics that, you know, we see everybody as a competitor, as somebody that you should fight. You know, we live in an open innovation world, right? Open technology standards, open everything. Let's have open mindsets. If someone comes to you and they do something similar to you, you know, maybe they can complement you. Maybe you two together can make 2 and 2 equal 5 rather than fight each other. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. I just put the link to your LinkedIn on the next events as well. But Jeanette, thank you so much for
Thank you so much.
being here today, and a big shout out to Tech Nordic Advocates for doing great work in the ecosystem.
Thank you for the opportunity. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.